Good afternoon. It's Friday, October 28th, almost time for Halloween. It's been 2 weeks since my last This Week in Crypto, so one would hope that a lot has happened, but the reality is it's not been incredibly eventful. Let's start with the markets. We are still in the same trading range we've been at, in 20,000 and change. The fact is, if you looked at it and you just compared it to 2 weeks ago, you would say, well, not much has happened. Bitcoin is only up 3.5% in that period of time. But there's some interesting internals going on. For example, in the last week, Bitcoin's up closer to 7% and has outperformed NASDAQ, which over the last week has only been up 1%. But in a 2-week period, NASDAQ's been up around 6%. So there's been some more variation. People are getting all excited about the correlations decreasing. Honestly, it's correlations decreasing inside of a range, so I won't get terribly excited about that. Ethereum is another place where, depending on what time period you look at, you might see more action than there is. For example, Ethereum over the last week or two is up 14 or 13%. And so that sounds like, wow, that's some serious outperformance. Except the previous period, it had dramatically underperformed. So if you look at the range of the Ethereum-Bitcoin pair, while it's had a pretty sizable move up over the last 2 weeks, it had a sizable move down in the 2 weeks before that. And so it's still within a normal trading range there as well. But there was something that did happen this week that is an event that is really interesting to look at. And that is on Tuesday of this week when Bitcoin did stage a rally. In fact, many coins staged a rally. The liquidations from shorts being liquidated on various leverage exchanges reached over $1.2 billion. Now, this is notable for a couple of reasons. I mean, the first, obviously, people in a trading range tend to lean on that trading range, and so it's not terribly surprising that there were liquidations on the short side. But what is somewhat surprising is with that magnitude of liquidation, the market moved well less than 10%. In fact, the liquidations didn't trigger enormous moves to the upside. Yeah, a little bit, and then they faded back. $300 to $400 maybe, which then faded. But that's pales in comparison to previous mass liquidation events, either on the short side or on the long side. So what's obviously happening is professional speculators are only risking parts of their money in accounts. The collateral will get wiped out, and they reestablish new shorts. And of course, that selling offsets the buying, and so we stay in a range. It will be really interesting when we have one of these events and there's follow through, either to the downside or the upside. That's what you have to look for. But leave that aside. The magnitude of these moves is so much smaller than we've seen in the past for Bitcoin. When you zoom out and look at the big picture, that's where it's really interesting. The fact is the market is still pricing the probability of Bitcoin reaching digital gold status, i.e. approaching gold's market cap, at less than 5%, actually less than 4% at the current price. That, at the same time as Bitcoin hash rates continue to increase, the difficulty of the network increases, and while some miners are in fact rumored to be filing for bankruptcy, the fact is the network has never been stronger. And that's really important to understand. Markets will seek equilibria. And so people worrying about miners going bankrupt, well, that's not really all that much to worry about unless the particular miner has an enormous amount of Bitcoin that has to get sold. But if they did, would they be going bankrupt? And the answer is, well, probably not. So basically, the market looks to still be in a trading range, but the fundamentals underlying it look good. So let's talk about the news side of the equation. There isn't a lot of real news, but there was some notable commentary over the last week about China, which I think is important. Now, we know the news in China that is important is Chairman Xi basically has full control, and full control for life. All opposition or even questioning of his decisions has kind of been wiped out. And so now he's in a very comfortable position. Now, at the same time, and I don't think it's a coincidence, the Hong Kong government is introducing new crypto legislation. Arthur Hayes made a comment, Arthur Hayes made a comment in his weekly missive, I don't know which, but he made a comment about this, and he sees this as a very interesting potential bullish, he calls them red shoots. In other words, Hong Kong being allowed by China to pursue crypto is a way of having the Chinese market accessing crypto without the government losing control over the financial system. That could be a very interesting development as it moves forward. It could be extremely bullish. I don't believe that has anything to do with the moves we've been seeing in the market. I don't think anything like that is remotely priced in, but it's definitely something worth watching. Now, the last comment that I'd like to make is about what I've been doing for the last 2.5 weeks. I've been to 5 different conferences, combination of traditional financial conferences and crypto conferences and industry conferences from multiple multi-asset banks. And there's a couple common themes that are important. Common theme number 1, everybody thinks that the Gary Gensler-led SEC is ridiculous. They make capricious and arbitrary decisions. They are following a political agenda. They do not use data, and they're going to get sued and sued and sued on basis of almost every one of their rulemakings. I have never seen anything like this before, and I want to be very clear about this. I've been in the business, I hate to admit it, but 40 years. In 40 years, going back to Arthur Levitt, there has never been an SEC commissioner that the exchanges, the brokers, the vendors, the asset managers, retail firms, institutional firms, all have the same opinion. Usually, some of those constituents are pro the SEC's actions and some of them are against the SEC actions, and they figure out a way to work together. These days, the only working together it is to fall over each other to see who could be the most against the proposals in a comment period. And this is important because it basically speaks to politics and the importance of that. At the end of the day, if November 8th results in anything other than the Democrats retaining control, it could be very difficult for the SEC to pursue this agenda. If it actually results in the Republicans taking over, it will be considered by most to be a repudiation of the far extreme leanings of Elizabeth Warren and her minions, of which Mr. Gensler is clearly one. And so perhaps there's hope on the horizon. Perhaps there's hope in terms of Bitcoin ETFs. Perhaps there's hope in terms of compromise with the CFTC, in terms of reasonable regulation of Bitcoin. That's one thing. The second big takeaway, and this is the more bullish one, is I've been going to industry conferences for a long time. In 2018, after I was almost 2 years into my crypto journey with CoinRoutes, most of my friends in traditional finance felt sorry for me. And in fact, nobody thought that they were going to be doing anything with crypto in the future. Today, right now, over the last, it's been going on for a long time, but certainly at these conferences, every single conversation I had was either asking more about crypto market structure, understanding where the issues were, or talking about how digital assets and how the digital and blockchain revolution is going to impact the financial industry. It's become, instead of if, a transition to when. Now, I do not believe the market is pricing this in. I certainly do not believe that the flows that we're going to see are priced in, but that is a massive sea change, and it's one that people should understand. Now, this is not trading advice. I want to be clear about this. Trends like this and arguments about what China might be doing and arguments that you might talk about on the macro side about delinking, these things can take months. Hell, they can even take years. But the bottom line is I have never been more bullish on the digital asset industry, on Bitcoin in particular, and on the ability and on the importance of helping firms deliver best execution. So I'll leave you with that for now. Have a great weekend and have a happy Halloween.